something a little different. First of all, instead of having premium nice coffee from my lovely coffee maker, got a nice little Cabernet Sauvignon going on with today's theme of all analog and analog all. Make sure you have an aerator when you're pouring your wine or decant it beforehand. This is a nice $12 Costco. Anyway, today, as I was alluding to, something really, really special. This is going to be kicking off season 5 of SonicFlare YouTube. Can you believe it? Season 5. Holy crap. Time flies. Episode 2. And it's going to be part of a multi-episode series of all things analog. You guys all have asked for it so many times since last summer, since I moved into Studio A, had it all dialed in, and set up the big Kuzma right here to the left. Yes, this is the Kuzma XL Air with the air bearing on the platter. So the platter basically is floating on a cushion, a tiniest cushion of air. And we've set this up with the Kuzma Sapphire 9-inch arm, which has some very cool features to it. And of course, the great SAT LM09, designed by the even greater, wonderful Marc Gomez, whom you will learn about much more in this coming video. Point of fact, as a matter of fact, not only was this superbly designed, engineered, etc., but it was set up expertly, like no other person can, outside of Marc Gomez, that is, who is, of course, Shane Butner of MIPS Distro, and him and his team are the distributors for North America, for SAT, and Lyra cartridges, amongst other things in their lineup. And so, of course, you know, the first thing that came to mind is, okay, this SAT, just the SAT Lyra combo with the Atlas Lambda that's mounted on it, and I'll get into why I chose the Lyra to get mounted for this first preview, is $54,000. Wait, what? What? Dude, $54,000. That is insane. I mean, don't get me started on all the things you can do with $54,000 instead of buying an SAT Lyra combo. That said, I was trying to figure out, how do I review this cartridge and arm combo or similar arm combos and cartridges? And you can't really do it in one video. Number one. Number two, you have to give perspective, right? Perspective is the mother of all clarity. If you don't have perspective vis-a-vis what you're reviewing in this case, it's all pointless. This is obviously not just any record player. This is not obviously just any analog setup. Moreover, as I've just alluded to, what will become especially meaningful to you guys is that I'm actually going to be dropping files. Yes, vinyl rips. Recorded with the lovely Korg DA1000, no longer made, or Tascam, sorry. DA1000, no longer made, in 2496. And you guys, so what I'm going to do is what I did with my first video of the year last week, is there's going to be a link in the description box to a Dropbox folder that will contain all these audio files. And you're going to be able to hear for yourself, beginning with today's video, the very first one, you're going to be able to hear for yourself what the SAT LM09 with the Lyra Atlas Lambda sounds like compared to, directly, the Sapphire 9-inch arm and Atlas Lambda as well. Lyra Atlas Lambda as well. I was loaned the Atlas Lambda, and I'm able to do these shootouts. So thanks to Shane for stepping way above and beyond and giving me opportunity to access this equipment and play with it. And so make sure you check out the Dropbox. I'm probably going to kick it off with 4 files, 2 on each arm, of 2, maybe 3 on each arm. We'll see how far I get. And then, of course, as the season, as the video series progresses, next week I'm hoping to drop a video on the Kuzma itself. Then we're going to talk about the Sapphire arm. Then we're going to talk about the SAT arm again. Then we're going to review them, and so on and so forth. So stay tuned. It's going to be an exciting couple of weeks coming up here on SonicFlare. But first, again, going back to that perspective thing. So obviously, I've been collecting records since the early 2000s, which is going on 25 years now, almost hard to believe. I've owned 24 turntables over those 25 years, I think. Maybe not quite 24, but close to it. Started off with the Fat Bob Rotor, Fat Bob was the turntable. Then came the Brinkmann Balance. Brinkmann Lagrange. Then came the Balance and the Lagrange. On and on. Kuzma, one Kuzma, another Kuzma. Technics, the 1200s, the 1210s rather. Then the 1000, on and on. Bergman. Look, you name it, I probably have had it. Same thing on tonearms. I've had just about every brand name, tonearm that you can think of. And, it gives me, I think, a unique perspective on being able to, in my opinion, of course, tell you what I think of these setups and how they compare and stack against each other, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is that you can't just post this, like I was saying earlier, you can't just post this SAT tone arm, be like, hey, I'm going to share a couple of words on it, blah, 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 that's it, right? It's not going to work out, right? For that to be meaningful, for there to be some kind of a storyline around it, I got to wrap it into multiple episodes. So, that said, I think the first thing I'm going to start off with is a quick little review, Analog 101. Let's call it that. And so, we start off with, the music signal contained in the vinyl groove. Hang on a second. Lovely. Anywhere from 2 to 3 microns in width and about 5 microns in depth on the vinyl surface. The stylus and cantilever, and indeed the entire motor structure by definition because it all gets transferred into it, be that an MC or an MM or DS audio optical cartridge, gets anywhere from 50 to 1,000 Gs in force enacted upon it, right? Just remember, if it sounds like a lot, it is a lot. Space shuttle takeoff into orbit, about 3G during launch. Your modern day Formula One car can break up to about 5.5 Gs, and so on and so forth. So you kind of get the idea. This tiny, teeny little thing has to withstand that much force, orders of magnitude higher than anything you would come in contact with on a day-to-day basis, right? I mean, your typical, just another reference is we're talking about cars, your modern day road car barely would scratch 0.75, 0.8 Gs on a good day, right? So enormous forces acting upon it. The signal then has to be amplified on an MC in an MC case by 2 60 dB gain stages, which is a factor of 1,000 of amplification. So imagine the tiny little signal. That much amplification before it then obviously gets amplified further by your amp and stuff. But to create the signal, it needs to be going through 2 gain stages. And, of course, the RIAA curve, which really is kind of shitty, to be honest. I've said that before. And, it's insane, right? So those are just the stats and facts around vinyl and the playback and retrieving that signal. So really, a turntable itself has to do 2 or 3 things at most. Has to be stable enough, obviously. Has to be inert enough, absorbent enough, so that only the musical signal that's being picked up by the diamond stylus, or whatever stylus it ends up being, transmitted to the cantilever into the motor structure, that only the music signal gets sent to amplification, not anything else extraneous to that signal, right? And of course it has to spin at 33 1/3 RPM, precisely, exactly. That's what records were cut at, or 45 RPM, or in rarer instances, 78 RPM, but that's a whole different ballgame discussion. So that's the turntable, right? So how do you make a turntable do that very, very well within those specs to make sense? Then, of course, on the tonearm side, given those facts, you want the tonearm's rigidity to be extremely high. Extremely high. Because again, the tonearm should only transmit the audio signal portion of what's being picked up on the vinyl groove, nothing else, right? So you want a very stiff tonearm, very inert tonearm. But the problem is, of course, that tonearm has to pivot, right? Or an air-bearing tonearm has to slide on air along an axis tangential to the groove. And so, how do you do that? If you got a pivot, so what do you have to have? You have to have bearings that are extremely frictionless, but more importantly than frictionless, they also need to be able to move quickly, get up to speed very quickly, so to speak. So the torque factor has to be taken into consideration. And then you need to obviously mount it all on an arm board, connect to the... As you can see, insane. I mean, vinyl, for all intents and purposes, is about the shittiest medium you could possibly pick to transcribe any kind of media, or sound to, that you could possibly want to. But whatever that is, whatever we've created all these decades ago, now over 100 years ago, we still love it. We still play it. We still love to listen to it, enjoy it, make it sound musical or not, etc., right? So all the pains that we have to go through to create that music is based on all those facts that I just mentioned. And so, in the case of SAT, since we're profiling and previewing, so to speak, the SAT LM09 today in the 9-inch version, let's talk a little about Marc Gomez. So Marc, like so many others that started in high-end audio, was like, you know what? I think I can design a tone arm better than anyone else can. Now, why does he say that? Well, he's got some insane qualifications around manufacturing, CAD/CAM design, physics, etc. I mean, he was involved in the European Space Agency. He designed very exotic parts for the German car companies and others. So yeah, he's got the qualifications and the engineering chops to create something genuinely unique. And so he kind of set out, this was like way back, I think in 2014, 2013. He was like, hey, you know what? I think I can do this better. So he started off with a clean sheet of paper. Okay, what does a tone arm, again, have to do? How can I impart my knowledge that I have onto it? And so it's a very minimalist looking tone arm. There's really 3 components to it. There's the head shell that's adjustable. There's a brake. There is a carbon fiber arm tube. There's a yoke on the end with the bearings. And that's basically it, right? So you're looking at, in the case of the LM09, a very simple structure, right? Very few breaks in the material. Very few material changes, which is important. We don't want to go from aluminum to carbon fiber to plastics to stainless steel to metal. You want to keep it all the same, right? And so the head shell is a combination of carbon fiber and aluminum. The yoke is aluminum. And yeah, I mean, the stuff is, you look at it. In fact, when I was unboxing it with Shane a couple of months ago, it's just like, holy shit, dude, this is not a tone arm. This is a hyper precision instrument, measuring instrument. I mean, really, at the end of the day, that's exactly what a tone arm is. It's really a measuring instrument. What does it measure? It measures the amplitude and longitude of the groove of the musical signal contained within the groove, right? That's basically it. So yeah, it's a measuring instrument, right? It's kind of like a microscope, so to speak, right? So that's, you know, the SAT LM09, basically, of course, you can mount any cartridge you want on it. It comes with a very custom built and designed specifically for the arm jig, mounting jig for the cartridge, and of course for the pivot to spindle distance and all that. Very intricate process. All in all, nothing complicated. It's, I mean, I think it took Shane all of, you know, maybe half an hour to get the arm mounted and all that. Once we got upstairs and had it all figured out. And then, of course, comes the fine tuning of the cartridge and all, which, by the way, he used a very cool record that I can't really talk too much about because it's not publicly available. It's a test record for setting up records, or excuse me, for setting up cartridges and tone arms. And we got it dialed in. And let me just tell you the amount of, like, the tiniest of change in azimuth was instantly audible, literally, with this test record, right? So Shane set the arm up. We started playing some music, and you know, yeah, I mean, you'll be able to hear it for yourself, right? So, kind of dialing back a little bit. The goal of this series is going to be to evaluate this specific arm with, for example, the Kuzma and other arms that I have, Bergman, a Schick 12-inch arm, possibly some other arm that's hopefully going to be coming in soon. There's going to be, back to the cartridge point, the reason I chose the Lyra Atlas Lambda, Shane is also the distributor for it, so it kind of makes sense. To me, in my opinion, having owned 40 or 50 MC cartridges over the last 25 years, the Lyra to me has been the one that's the most consistent, the most well-built, and frankly, to me, the most musically attractive cartridge in the MC world, right? Now, before you freak out, I know a couple of years ago, I went all in on DS audio, and guess what? I'm still all in on DS audio, especially with the new V2, which is going to be part of this vinyl series review of the DSEQ1 from the great minds at EMM Labs. It's taken it again to a whole new level. But for MC cartridges, specifically, to me, the Lyra represents what the pinnacle of MC cartridges are, right? As far as design, implementation, etc. And of course, you can't just plug in, remember that 1,000-factor magnification or amplification over 10 octaves? 10 octaves. You need a phono stage. So, in for review, part of the analog series again. We've got the great Mola Mola Loopy. It's got a 4-input setup, remote controlled from your phone via Bluetooth. Think of that. The great Putzi created it with his Mola Mola line. And yeah, sounds fantastic. But of course, I also have my reference, which is the Einstein big 2-box phono, the outboard power supply, and of course the MC phono stage, discrete setup, etc. The quietest phono stage I've ever heard and had, period. Even quieter, yes, than the Mola Mola, even though the Mola Mola is very, very, very quiet, but this thing's even quieter. So yeah, it's we're going to be listening to all kinds of music, through all kinds of cartridges, all kinds of tone arms, but we're going to kick it off next week with a quick preview on the Kuzma turntable, a little more details into it, the Sapphire arm, and then I think after that we're going to have a shootout, right? We're going to review the arm, the SAT, and so on and so forth. So we'll have some fun over the next couple of weeks. Thank you for tuning in. And don't forget, click down in the instruction or the description box. There's going to be a Dropbox link. Follow that to the music files that I'm going to post and upload for a preview, if you will. And yeah, like and subscribe as always. I'd appreciate it. And we'll see you guys soon. Ciao.